And we'll start with 10-80-10. This is my version of the 80-20 rule. I love the 80-20 rule. A lot has been written about it recently. I paid a boatload of money to go and see Richard Koch speak in Chicago last year with Perry Marshall. He's the original 80-20 guy, all about simplicity and simplifying business. Pick a task. In your head, think of something relatively simple in your business that you would like to get off your plate. The red represents the work that you do. The grey is what that other person might do. So right now you might just hand that, because outsourcing to the Philippines may seem too hard, it's too complicated, I've got to go hire the person, where do I do that? Maybe this is just handing it off to your 2IC in your office, wherever you are. You would love to hand the whole task off, but that's just not feasible at this point. So you hand off a little bit. And over time, maybe you can grow how much of that task they do. Like Dave was saying before, they get a little bit better, a bit more training, they use the system, you improve the system, you hand off a bit more, you hand off a bit more. But then you realize that there's this thing called correcting, and that this person that you're handing off all this work to doesn't do it as well as you. And this is probably the hardest part about doing this. The hardest part about delegating is remembering that when you actually started doing this, you were pretty shit at it too. And you didn't have those systems, and you've got to give them a little bit of time to get good. What I want to think about, well, we'll do that when we get to module 3, but we're going to change this from correcting to coaching and mentoring. But if that looks reasonable, this is the goal. Where we want to be doing, this is the most important bit that you can do, is defining what that work looks like. Anyone know Scrum? Any software devs in the room that are familiar with Scrum? So definition of done is a term that gets used in Scrum. I think we're going to see a lot of Scrum methodology being used more and more in business. It's a great project management tool. Scrum is all about definition of done. How do I know when I've done it and done it well? So your job up here is to put the input into the system to give them the tools and resources that they need, and to give them the system so that they can go do the bulk of the work for you. And then they come back at the end and hand this back to you. It should be perfect. It's not going to be the first few times. Your job then is the coaching and mentoring, helping them get better and better and better over time, so that that grey bit in the middle grows and grows and grows and grows. Now, if you can hand off 80% of your workload, how does life feel? It also makes you far, far more efficient. And if that's too hard to get your head around, well, think about breaking that big task into smaller chunks. You would kick things off, lob the input into the system, and they'd come back around. I think someone calls these pause points, but they basically come back around, almost check in with you. This is what I've done so far, boss. How are we going? Yep, tweak that, tweak that. Now here's the next part of the system. Off you go and do that. Check in with you again. Oh, yep, we're on track. This is really good. Lob that into the final part of the system and off you go. And the key thing with Project Hourglass is realizing that these don't have to be the same people all the way through. Your job may be just to sketch out that blog post and lob it off to your writer. They come back, and then you go off to your illustrator or your graphics person, and they go and collect all the screen grabs and tidy up all the images and do all that. And then maybe you've got a doer at the end here that posts it and distributes it across the web, or posts your Facebook post, or whatever it might be. Different specialities. You're not trying to get all of these vastly different skills in one brain that you hire for 40 hours a week, because that's getting harder and harder to do. Hire someone for 5 hours a week, or 3 hours a week, or 15 hours a week to do that special task. And you can obviously do more and more and more of those. But then you can start to go the other way. So it's fractal, just like 80-20. So this represents the person doing the work. This is you, they do the work, and they hand it back to you. What we then realized was, if this was my 2IC here in Melbourne, that actually I can hand a task to her, and she could start to hand off 80% of what she does. Because this is a sort of high-ish level thinking level. This actually is more following checklists and getting shit done. So then she's got 10-80-10 on her work, so now she's 5 times more efficient. She's handing off work. And this, Even within this, we then started to realize there's a 10-80-10 in here. And that middle 80% we actually hand off to a computer. That's the bit that's completely automated. This person looks after the automation, they hand the work back. Yep, that's all good. They hand it back to me. That's fine, keep going. Have a think how you can use something like this in your business, 10-80-10. The most important job is that first 10%. Defining what needs to be done, giving them the resources, and getting you out of the way, because you are probably the bottleneck most of the time. You're sitting on that idea, and until you get that first bit off your plate, not trying to do it perfectly, just giving the brief to someone else and saying, right, off you go, get them running.